Very good morning to all. Today I'm going to discuss the topic of inflation with all of you. The problem of inflation is as old as the market system, but it became a serious matter of concern for all the policy makers after the Second World War and specifically after 1970s. In India also it became a serious problem in 1991 when there was double digit inflation and we got the new economic policy at that time, and the one of the major reason for giving new economic policy was the double digit inflation. And there are many questions that we would like to answer with this presentation, like what are the economic consequences of inflation, what are the factors that causes inflation, what are the different types of inflation, and also like why do we control inflation and why inflation is not good for the economy. But the problem is not that easy, because if policyholders or the government try to control inflation, then there are many side effects of controlling inflation, that because it may lead to decrease in the investment, which in turn become create a problem of unemployment in the economy. But we will try to understand the whole phenomena of inflation in this presentation. So let us come and discuss the presentation. According to modern economists, any rise in the general price level is not inflation. In their opinion, only a persistent, prolonged, sustained, considerable, and appreciable rise in the general price level can be called inflation. Though the term persistent, prolonged, and sustained are not defined precisely, it implies that if price rise is not persistent, prolonged, or sustained, it is not inflation, whatever the rate of rise in the general price level is. So, looking this in mind, we can define inflation as the considerable and persistent rise in the general price level over a period of time. Now, as far as the measurement of inflation is concerned, basically there are two common methods of measurement of inflation. First is measuring inflation by percentage change in price index number, and the second method is measuring inflation by change in the GNP deflator. Now, as far as the first is concerned, like with the percentage change in price index number, the formula is like rate of inflation is equal to PIN for period T minus PIN T minus 1 divided by PIN T minus 1 into 100. So, here PIN T, that is price index number in the year or period selected for measurement of inflation, and T minus 1 here indicates the preceding year or a period. Now, two widely used PIN are wholesale price index and consumer price index. Wholesale price index is also known as producer price index, and wholesale price index is used to measure the general rate of inflation, and CPI is used to measure the change in the cost of living. Now, second method, measuring inflation by GNP deflator. So, GNP deflator is equal to nominal GNP divided by the real GNP, where nominal GNP is the GNP at current price and real GNP is GNP at the price of the base year. Now, the question arises that which method is better, whether the deflator method or the PIN index number method. In the opinion of the economist, GNP deflator gives a more appropriate measure of inflation. The reason is that GNP takes into account all goods and services, and therefore GNP deflator takes into account prices of all the goods and services, whereas wholesale price index is based on only wholesale prices which exclude value added at retail stage. So, therefore, wholesale price index gives only a partial measure of inflation. And that's why the economists consider GNP deflator as a better measure of inflation than wholesale price index. In this slide, we are going to discuss the types of inflation on the basis of the rate of inflation. So, inflation is categorized into different types on the basis of different criterion. So, in this, on the basis of rate of inflation, it can be divided into three types like low rate inflation or moderate inflation, galloping inflation, and hyperinflation. So, just like disease, inflation exhibits different level of severity. So, moderate inflation is basically the inflation when price rises at a moderate rate over a longer period of time. So, it is normally a single digit rate of inflation. An important feature of moderate inflation is that it is predictable in nature. So, during the period of moderate inflation, the people continue to have faith in the monetary system and confidence in money as a store of value. And money continues to work as a medium of exchange, and people continue to hold money as an asset. So, when price rises at a relatively stable, so people trust money, and because it retains its value from month to month and year to year. So, people are willing to write long term contracts in money terms because they are confident that the relative price of goods that they buy and sell will not get too far out of line. So, in other words, we can say that this is the rate of inflation where every economy welcome, and this helps in the growth of the economy because that motivates investor to invest in the economy for the purpose of the maximization of their profit. Second type of inflation here is the galloping inflation. So, inflation in the double digit range is known as galloping inflation, or it is a very high rate of inflation. Galloping inflation is relatively common, particularly in countries like suffering from weak government, war, or revolution. Many Latin American countries such as Argentina, Brazil had inflation rate of 50 to 700% in the year 1970s and 80s. So once galloping inflation becomes entrenched, serious economic distortions arises, and generally most contracts get indexed to a price index or to a foreign currency. In these conditions, money loses its value very quickly. So people hold only the bare minimum amount of money needed for daily transactions. So financial markets wither away as capital flies abroad. So people hoard goods, buy houses, and never ever lend money at low nominal interest rates. The third type here is the hyperinflation. This is the most deadly and dangerous situation because inflation can rise to any level, and nothing good can be said about an economy in which prices are rising 1,000,000 or even 1,000,000,000% per year. Hyperinflations are particularly interesting to students of inflation because they highlight its disastrous impact. And we have seen in Germany the situation of hyperinflation in 1920s, and economists wrote that the situation was very dangerous, and it was like in the morning when people go to the market, they go with handful of money and come back with bag full of goods, but on the same day in the evening the situation get reversed and they go out in the market with bag full of money and come back with the handful of commodities. So, and the situation was that it was cheaper to burn currency notes to make tea rather than buying it in the tea shop. Price of house in pre-inflation period was just sufficient to pay a day's rent in post-inflation period. In this slide, we are going to discuss modern inflation theory. The modern approach to inflation follows the theory of price determination. The price theory tells that in the competitive market, price of any commodity is determined by the market forces of demand and supply. And any variation in the price of commodity, if any, is caused by the variation in the demand and supply factors. So, likewise, according to modern theory of inflation, the general price level is determined by aggregate demand and aggregate supply. And variation in aggregate price level is caused by the variation in the aggregate demand and aggregate supply. So, the modern theory of inflation is in fact the synthesis of classical and Keynesian economics. And the modern analysis of inflation shows that inflation is caused by both demand side as well as the supply side factors. And demand side factors are called demand push inflation, and supply side factors are called cost push inflation. So, accordingly, there are two kinds of inflation on the basis of the causes of inflation, that is, demand pull inflation and the cost push inflation. So, however, like many economists hold the view that demand pull and cost push factors do not affect the price level independently in isolation of one another, but rather demand pull and cost push factors interact to cause inflation, whatever factors may be the cause of initial inflation. In this slide, we are going to discuss more about the demand pull inflation. It occurs when aggregate demand rises more rapidly than the economy's productive potential. Like as you see in the diagram, the original aggregate demand curve is AD and it intersects aggregate supply curve at point E, where the general price level prevalent in the market becomes OP and the level of output is OQ. Now, aggregate demand, you all know that it consists of C plus I plus G in the closed economy, and if it is open economy, then we add X minus M, that is net exports also in this. Now, if there is increase in the aggregate demand, maybe because of the increase in the government expenditure or the consumption level, or because of the increase in the investment due to some monetary policy changes, whatever be the cause, if there is increase in the aggregate demand and it shifts to AD1, then the new equilibrium changes to E1 and price level increases to OP1. So, you can see that here the cause for increase in the price is the demand, that is aggregate demand. So, therefore, since price has increased because of the increase in the aggregate demand, it is known as the demand pull inflation. But a particularly damaging form of demand pull inflation occurs when government engage in deficit spending and rely on the monetary printing press to finance their deficit. Like as the case of Indian economy, we can see that the government budget always is the deficit budget. But there are different ways of financing the deficit amount, but if government relies on printing of new notes, then that may lead to the situation that we have seen in the diagram, because the large deficits and the rapid money growth increase aggregate demand, which in turn increases the price level. So, thus when the German government financed its spending in 1922-23 by printing billions and trillions of paper marks, which came into the marketplace in search of bread and fuel, it was no wonder that the German price level rose a billionfold. So, this was the demand pull inflation there. And this scene was replaced in the early 1990s when the Russian government financed its deficit budget by printing monetary rubles. So, the result was an inflation rate that averaged 25% per month or 13.55% per year. So, it means that demand pull inflation we have seen occurs because of the increase in the demand in the economy, and increase in the demand may be caused by the increase in the supply of money, which again leads to the increase in the consumption level, investment level, and so on and so forth. So, demand pull inflation, in brief, we can summarize as the inflation which occurs because of the increase in the aggregate demand in the economy. And since the cause is the increase in the aggregate demand to increase in the price, therefore it is known as the demand pull inflation. So the second type of inflation because of the causes of inflation is the cost push inflation. So inflation sometimes occurs because of the increase in the cost rather than the increase in the demand. So when price increases because of the increase in the cost of production is known as cost push inflation, or this is also known as supply shock inflation. Now what happens is when there is increase in the cost of the production, then the profit of the businessman goes down because as cost increases, immediately they may not be able to increase the price and the profit margin goes down. And when profit margin goes down, then the investment goes down and businessmen are not keen to invest much, and because of which the aggregate supply in the economy goes down. And as aggregate supply decreases, the aggregate supply curve shift leftward, which leads to the increase in the price of the commodity. Now this we can see in the diagram that original aggregate supply curve intersects the aggregate demand at point E, and the original price is OP, where the output is OQ. But as because of the pressure of the cost of the production, aggregate supply decreases and shift to the leftward and leading to the new equilibrium, that is E1, where the price level has increased to P1. Thus, the cost push inflation may be classified on the basis of different factors that lead to the increase in the cost of production. Like it may be like wage push inflation, like when labor demand higher wages because of the trade union, and if they demand higher wages and if businessmen are not in a position to increase the price of the commodities immediately, then also the profit margin goes down and they will decrease the supply, they will decrease the investment because they don't want to demand more labor there. It may be because of the high expectation about the profit of the businessman, that is known as profit push inflation. Then there can be other costs like transportation cost, cost of raw material. There are various elements of cost of production which may lead to decrease in the supply of the commodity because of the decrease in the profit margin of the businessman due to increase in these costs. So cost push inflation, normally we show this with aggregate supply curve, because in this diagram we are just taking two curves, aggregate demand and aggregate supply. So now after understanding inflation and the types of inflation, let us now discuss the economic impacts of inflation. Inflation affects all those who depend on the market for their livelihood. The effect of inflation may be favorable or unfavorable and low or high depending on the rate of inflation. For example, galloping and hyperinflation have devastating effect on the economy and have serious social and political implications too. As far as the economic impact of inflation is concerned, it has different impact on different group of the people in the economy. Now first let us see the impact on income and distribution of wealth. We always say that generally that inflation distributes income in favor of rich, and the poor are always the sufferer because of the inflation. But inflation changes the income distribution pattern only when it creates a divergence between total price received and total price paid by different sections of the society. Now let us suppose take example of that there are only two major form of income, wage income and profit. Now when price rise, so sector wise uniform, that wage increases proportionately to the rise in the profit income. Now in that situation the income distribution remains generally unaffected. But when output price increases at a rate higher than the input price, profits rise faster than the wage incomes and incomes get undistributed or redistributed in favor of the profit earners, that is the employers. The high income group have higher ability to save and therefore higher ability to acquire wealth also. So during the period of inflation, income of the high income groups increases at a higher rate than that of the lower income group. So during the period of inflation, income of the businessman increases at a higher rate than that of the employees, and income of the business executives increases faster than that of low grade employees. So therefore the higher income group are able to save more and accumulate more wealth than the lower income group. As a result, the wealthy people are able to acquire more and more wealth than the low wealth holder. So it may thus be concluded that inflation changes wealth distribution in favor of the wealthy class of the society. People of the fixed income category are the net loser during the period of inflation. The reason is that their income remains constant even during the period of inflation, but the prices of goods and services they consume increases. So as a result, the purchasing power of their income gets decreased in proportion to the rate of inflation. Just like fixed income group class, wage earners are also hurt by the inflation. But if we see the labor market, then there are two types of labor market, organized and unorganized. The wage in the unorganized labor market have not increased in proportion to the rate of inflation. So therefore the labor in the unorganized sector is a net loser during the period of inflation. But however, things have been found different in the organized sector. Now there is a study conducted by Times Bureau in May 2009 which shows that the rise in the wage rate was 5 to 6% point higher than the labor productivity in the manufacturing sector in 2007. So this might be both the cause and effect of the inflation. So thus it may be concluded that inflation harms the labor of the unorganized sector, but it benefits the labor of the organized sector. As far as the impact on debtors and creditors are concerned, always the borrowers gains and lenders lose during the period of inflation. Like for example, suppose a person borrow rupees 5 million at 12% simple rate of interest for a period of 5 years to buy a house. Suppose also that the increase in the property price is such that property price double in every 5 years. Now after 5 years the borrower would pay a total sum of rupees 8 million, whereas the price of house rises to rupees 10 million. So the borrower gains by rupees 2 millions. The lender loses by the same amount in the sense that if he had bought the house himself, his asset value would have risen to rupees 10 million. Or in other words, we can say that the value of money has gone down when the borrower had returned money to the lender because of the inflation. In this slide, we are going to discuss the very important concept related to inflation, that is inflationary gap. Classical economists considered an increase in money supply as the only cause of an increase in the aggregate demand and the only cause of inflation. But Keynes had a difference of opinion over there, and Keynes postulated that inflation is caused by the increase in the aggregate demand. But according to Keynes, the aggregate demand might increase because of the increase in the real factors. That is not just because of the increase in the money supply. And these real factors are like increase in consumer demand due to increase in marginal propensity to consume, money income remaining the constant, or increase in the investment demand due to upward shift in the marginal efficiency of capital and increase in the government expenditure. So such changes may take place even when the supply of money remain constant there. So increase in aggregate demand, aggregate supply remaining constant, creates a gap between demand and supply, and this gap is known as the inflationary gap. And according to Keynes, inflationary gap is the cause of the inflation there. But here Keynes has explained that inflationary gap is the gap between the planned expenditure and the real output available at the full employment. So it implies that the expenditure creating demand in excess of the output supplied at less than full employment level is not inflationary according to the Keynes. Now same concept can be explained with the help of diagram here. You can see that x-axis we are taking income and output here, and on y-axis we have taken aggregate expenditure. AD1 is the original aggregate demand, which shows C plus I plus G as a factor of aggregate demand, and the 45-degree line is the aggregate supply curve, and the original equilibrium is at E1, where the equilibrium level of output is Y1. Now if there is increase in the government expenditure in the economy, and because of which aggregate demand increases and upward shift, then the new equilibrium is at E3, where output also increases. But if the economy is functioning at a suppose full employment level and production cannot be increased, then there will be a gap, because if output we want to remain the same at Y1, then at new aggregate demand curve, this equilibrium point will be at E2, not at E3, because at E2 the level of output and income is same, and the only option is to increase in the price of the goods and services there. So this E1, E2 is explained here as inflationary gap. So this generates only money income without increasing any real output if the economy is in the full employment equilibrium level. In this slide, we are going to discuss about the very important concept related to inflation is the Phillips curve. The major macroeconomic tool used to understand inflation is the Phillips curve. This curve shows the inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment rate. The basic idea is that when output is high and unemployment is low, wages and prices tend to rise more rapidly. This occurs because workers and unions can press more strongly for wage increases when jobs are plentiful, and firms can more easily raise price when sales are brisk. Here there are two types of Phillips curve that we are seeing in the diagram. On the left hand side there is a short run Phillips curve. It is normal, showing the inverse relationship between inflation rate and unemployment rate, and so you can see the downward sloping curve as a Phillips curve. But right hand side, there is a long run Phillips curve. And how does the economy move from the short run to the long run? The basic idea is that when price changes are unanticipated, the short run Phillips curve tend to shift up or down. And this point is illustrated by a series of steps in a boom cycle here in this figure, which is showing in the right hand side of the graph. Now initially, to begin with, suppose we say that there is downward sloping short run Phillips curve, and the economy is at point A, where there is some level of unemployment that exists in the economy, and the price level is P1. Now suppose in an economy there is expansion which lowers the unemployment rate. As unemployment declines, firms recruit workers more rigorously, giving larger wage increase than formerly. So as output approaches capacity, price marks up rise, and wages and prices begin to accelerate. Now in terms of our Phillips curve, the economy moves up and to the left to the point B here on the graph, on the original short run Phillips curve. Now inflation expectation have yet not changed. So the economy stays on the original Phillips curve, and the lower unemployment rate raises inflation during the second period. Now because inflation has risen, firms and workers are surprised and they revise upward their inflationary expectation. Now they begin to incorporate the higher expected inflation into their wages and price decisions. The result is the shift in the short run Phillips curve, and we can see that there is a new Phillips curve which has shifted upward, and there is a new point C where the economy can exist now with the same level of unemployment. As comparative to B, if you can see that unemployment rate has increased there because of the expectation of higher wages. The demand for labor has gone down and unemployment rate has come to the original level of unemployment which was there on the earlier short run Phillips curve. But here the price has increased to OP2. So the long run Phillips curve we can see is the vertical line where unemployment rate is fixed, it is same, and the inflation rate has been increasing from P1 to P2 and so on. Here the economy will have the same real GDP and unemployment rate as it was at point A at the original short run Phillips curve, even though the nominal magnitudes, that is prices and nominal GDP, are now growing more rapidly than they did before the expansion raised the expected rate of inflation. So after discussing the whole phenomena of inflation, we have come to the conclusion that mild rate of inflation or moderate rate of inflation is always good for the economy, and it is welcomed by all the individuals as well as the policymakers, because mild rate of inflation is must in the economy, because that motivates the investment, because any investor investing money with the objective of maximizing profit will invest only if they expect that prices will increase in the economy, because increase in the price indicates that there is a demand for the product in the economy, and deflation is not at all good for the growth of the economy. Disinflation, there is another concept related to inflation. Disinflation means decrease in the inflation rate. So if moderate rate of inflation is there, then it is anyhow good for the economy. Now there is a question that I just need to ask, and I need to know the views from all of you, that during the Great Depression there was fall in the prices of most of the commodities in the world market. Now if any investor, or suppose the farmer who had large mortgage during the period, what will be the situation of these people in the economy? Another question is like, if you know that Japanese economy was suffering from depression, or you can say a recession in 1990s. Now if suppose any student take a education loan for their education, and after 2 years when they have to repay the loan, and suppose if they find that there is a recession in the economy, and prices are going down, wages are going down, salaries are going down, so what will be the situation? Whether this student will be in a good position to return the loan, or how do you analyze the situation of this student in this situation? So with this thought, with this question, I would like to leave here, and I would appreciate if you write me if there is any query further. Thank you.